Okay, are we recording now? Okay. Hi, everybody. Happy Moon Festival to all my friends. I have a whole lot of things that I really want to get to today, and I'm going to be initiating something that I promised for a long time. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it because it's going to get shifted over to the other channel after today's episode. It's something I talked about in a previous video about my friend Rekha. And so we'll be getting that a little later in this particular video. The first thing I wanted to do though, and we've been really busy, I've got a friend named Misra who had written to me back on earlier in the month of September. And I answered her question actually by typing out an answer to it. I'm going to read all that now. And then I asked her, I said, if you've got more questions, write to me at Old Soup. And she did, so I'm going to try and answer what she's asked about and make that clear before I go on to the substance of this video. It says, hey Tom, my question is something I have been grappling with. I am an Indian national living in a different country and been practicing for 8 years, but the past 2 to 3 years have been really challenging for me. I have done a master's degree in finance, although I'm struggling to find a job after graduating, and then COVID hit, which has exasperated the search for a job and other issues. I've been able to pray a third million daimoku, and I'm starting my fourth. I have received several inconspicuous benefits and been able to overcome certain shortcomings in my life. But I haven't been able to show actual proof, and since Buddhism is about winning and losing in terms of society and earthly desires leading to enlightenment, which makes me think that in regards to that I have been unsuccessful. How do I challenge such a situation? I have not given up, and I still have hope and believe that things will change, but sometimes I do grapple with fear and despondency, hoping to hear from you. Cheers. And I know exactly where you're coming from. And Misra, and there are other people that have asked virtually the same thing. They basically are expressing to me, I have these really great goals in my life and I'm trying to achieve them and I don't seem to be getting there as fast as I can. Do you have some good input on how I can supercharge this process a bit to move it along? And I will get into that in a moment. I want to read my answer that I actually typed out for Misra, though, in reply to that part that I just read. I said, Misra, I didn't really say dear Misra, I just started answering. I said, fear and despondency are natural components of the 3,000 realms. Okay, so if you challenge your life to reveal your Buddha nature, there will be times when you will experience fear and despondency, because there will be times when the devilish functions defeat you momentarily, temporarily, until you get in front of the Gohonzon and everything straightens out again. But moment to moment to moment, we're vulnerable to attack. And quite often, right when we're really trying is when we get hit with things that give us cause to have doubt. And luckily, almost all of Nichiren's teachings are about how you overcome this reality, because it's called, the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils. And it only occurs to those people that are advancing to a state of clarity that is kind of threatening to the dark side of all things, okay? So it's not a bad thing that you're experiencing a little bit of an effort that's being required you're not necessarily seeing an immediate result from. So again, fear and despondency are natural components of the 3,000 realms. These are called devilish functions. When you feel fear and despondency, you take it to the Gohonzon with a sincere and seeking spirit, and knowing that there is no separation between the entity of your life and the Gohonzon, you query, what the hell is this? Don't stop that query until you see the change that this focus will bring. But it's this focus. What I just talked about is faith. Winning is attaining Buddhahood. It's not about getting a gig. It's not about achieving a certain life goal. You can do that and go Titan. I know many people that have. that's really not a determinate condition of the winning and losing that we're talking about in Buddhism. Winning and losing in Buddhism is attaining Buddhahood or quitting. Okay, that's winning and losing. So a lot of people like to qualify that as, because daily life does take a powerful desire to combat these things that try to hold us back. So yeah, winning in the sense of winning that we think about in a sporting event or in gambling or in love or any of those kinds of things are all reflections of that kind of fortune. It's moving the needle in the direction we want it to. But the reality is that, again, no matter what you achieve in your life, the most important thing for you to strive to achieve and have a goal to achieve is Buddhahood. If you do that, I think everything else, in my experience, everything else just comes to you. It's way beyond, certainly in my life, almost all of the huge benefits I've gotten, I have no way of explaining them happening other than the mercy of the Gohonzon and the power of my faith. Because I didn't have a plan. I didn't execute some sort of, if I do this, then I'll be here. And then if I do this, I'll be here. And I didn't climb a mountain like that. I had something pick me up and take me to the top of the mountain. There's a huge difference between climbing it with your own strength and then feeling the strength of the law. That comes from you, and that comes from your life, and that comes from how you perceive and endeavor within your life's practice. Because this isn't, you've been practicing for 8 years, and that's a good long time. But it's certainly not the determinate period that would qualify whether you're succeeding or failing in regard to attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. And like I said, that's really the big deal. So let me continue, but that's where I'm coming from as I write this. Winning is attaining Buddhahood. That should be your prayer. You should devote yourself to a path where this is the highest priority and constantly pray for your life to be a shining example of the power of the law. Feelings of fear and despondency are reflective of a lack of this conviction, and that is the teaching of Nichiren that we practice as the Buddhism of the Sun. I screwed up my own sentence here. Feelings of fear and despondency are reflective of a lack of this conviction that I was referring to before, that the most important thing is to attain Buddhahood. The most important thing is to repay your debt of gratitude to the original teacher and your responsibility for the vow you've taken as a bodhisattva of the earth to help establish widespread propagation in whatever fashion your karmic opportunity allows you to, and to do human revolution in this lifetime, attaining Buddhahood in your present form in order to prove the power or the efficacy or the truth of the teaching. So it says, feelings of fear and despondency are reflective of a lack of this conviction. That is the teaching of Nichiren that we practice as the Buddhism of the Sun. That means you need to take it to the Gohonzon and figure out with your own Buddha nature, what your life is reflecting to you. No one makes you the Buddha but you. That is based on your behavior and your actions. Cut yourself some slack. You are doing all the right things. Constantly seek to deepen your faith. The depth of faith is a critical issue. It's really the whole ball game. Yes. If one does not believe or have faith in the teaching, one is doubting the wisdom of the Buddha. And then you are essentially cutting yourself off from the power and wisdom that already resides within you, that is only revealed through your faith in the teaching. It really isn't complicated. If your prayer is always to do the Buddha's work, and when I say the Buddha, I'm not talking about Shakyamuni. I'm talking about the eternal Buddha that occupies all of our lives as our essential Buddha nature. I'm really talking about the original teacher, Nichiren, when I say the Buddha's work. Because Kosen Rufu is the Buddha's work. We're in the latter day of the law. I don't really give a shit about the former or the middle day of the law. That was a long time ago. I live here now. This is about now. Okay, so this really isn't complicated. If your prayer is always to do the Buddha's work and reveal the law within your life for the sake of expressing it to others, not for the sake of getting benefit yourself, but the expression of a desire to repay your debt of gratitude to the original teacher and to fulfill your vow as a bodhisattva of the earth, to uphold the teaching and to reveal the truth by virtue of your own life. That's really the key, and I'm going to get into answering this. This is going to be a long answer, frankly. All right. If your prayer is always to do the Buddha's work and reveal the law within your life for the sake of expressing it for others, you can never go wrong. And based on your sincerity, you may find yourself having experiences that are more powerful than anything you speak of seeking now. Please write to me at oldsoup@gmail if you want to discuss more fully. Tom T. And again, oldsoup, OLDSOUPP. So she did write to me. She wrote to me on Gmail. Hang on, let me go to that. All right. So, Misa writes back to me. Hey T, hope this finds you well. I wrote you a few weeks ago about my fear and despondency and also regarding my struggles of finding a job for almost 18 months after finishing grad school. So now, Misa, I'm not sure if you ever even saw that I had actually replied to you in that video when you originally asked your question. So, a little bit about me. I am an Indian who moved to study to Australia, although I wanted to go and study at Columbia University in New York City, as I fell in love with the city when I was an 18-year-old traveling. Fast forward to 2019, I was happy after finishing grad school and got a job at a mid-tier accounting firm and was in a relationship which was going well. But as soon as the pandemic hit, I was laid off in March 2020 and my relationship ended, where I was ghosted after nearly 2.5 years, which hurt a lot and broke me, and I wanted answers. But I didn't get it, and I decided to find it within them. During this phase, my faith became stronger than ever, and I finished my first Million Daimoku campaign, and my study also became strong. And I realized that we as humans need to have courage like the Lion King, meaning never retreat. But I still fear, and the feeling of being left behind in this race of life creeps into my life when I see my friends flourish and do really well, and I am still in a struggling phase, okay? And don't compare yourself to your friend. You've got so much wisdom. I mean, first of all, you just described the great good fortune of having problems. Okay, you just acknowledged that it was the difficulty that you faced that motivated you to take your faith to the next level, chant 1,000,000 Daimoku, and suddenly come up with this insight or deepening of faith as a result of also studying more. Okay, so again, for me personally, without my problems, I would be nowhere, because that's the only thing that gets me off my ass and makes me think twice about what I'm thinking and go into a self-corrective phase of seeking the wisdom of the Buddha through the Gosho and through the Daimoku that I have with my faith and my relationship with Nichiren Daishonin when I'm sitting in front of the Gohonzon. So again, these problems that you're going to express to me, I got to tell you, they're the firewood of Buddhahood. I mean, earthly desires equal enlightenment doesn't mean we get all of our earthly desires and it makes us enlightened. It's what it means is that through the struggle to achieve earthly desires, we're constantly forced to chant Daimoku in order to accomplish them, and that time in front of the Gohonzon constantly brings closer and closer to the surface our true identity, that we are the only one that can come to realize and perceive and have it matter. What anybody else thinks of me isn't important to me, frankly. What's important to me is what my mentors have taught me and how much I can look at the Gohonzon straight in the eye and go, I'm doing it, dude. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And then taking what there is to suffer and enjoying what there is to enjoy, and constantly knowing that I'm going to be screwed with. I'm going to find opposition. This isn't going to be some smooth, easy path that reflects the level of Daimoku that I'm chanting, and if I just chant enough, then I don't have any problems. Freaking no. The farther I go into the fulfillment of my mission, the more difficult this all becomes. You don't know what a challenge it is to overcome the things that seem to keep me from being able to do these videos, for instance. Okay, and these videos have been instrumental in my life as much as they might have helped anybody else's. So understand you're still in the right place, okay? I'm going to give you the secrets on how to expedite this again in a moment, all right? So fast forward, okay, just hang on. As well, and I'm still in the struggling phase. Okay, so don't compare yourself to others. That will always be a false flag of advance or a false flag of lagging. It's not up to them or their lives. Think of all the people that you must know, as I do, who at one time in their life had what you're talking about, that reflecting, but they end up divorcing. They end up having something go wrong. It doesn't sustain itself. You know, what you're seeing is a momentary time in your peers' lives that doesn't even begin to compare with your whole life as a bodhisattva of the earth. Okay, so all they've got to look forward to is old age. You've got Buddhahood to look forward to. They're two completely different levels of good fortune, really. What is good fortune? Okay, so it's apart from the above mentioned, there's a feeling within me which makes me think I have let my mother down. My mother passed away due to, I think, to cancer, I think is what this was. It's a typo. When I was 16, due to cervical cancer, and when my sister had taken faith, but she left because our mother did not make it. So one of my biggest goals is to get my sister back into the practice, and I pray for that. I have been praying for you, pardon me. I have been praying for, as you said, to carry the Buddha's work and exhibit the brilliance of the law through my life, and have tried to find my vow and my mission, which has been challenging. I have also been able to do Shakabuku, 3 friends, and discuss about practice and many others, which always is a struggle for me. I just wanted to know, what am I doing wrong? And the fact that something hasn't yet come to pass doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. That's why faith is this important element, because faith means you do it and you don't judge it by this moment. Faith is that at the moment that's correct for your life, based on your karma, okay, those things will come to pass, or you will naturally find something that is more attractive to you, those things, and subsequently in hindsight you realize what couldn't have manifested if what your path had originally been would have manifested, okay? And where would you really be once you attained Buddhahood if you had actually have gotten what you were chanting for when you were deluded and not understanding what that takes? So this is really a very complex process, and that's why faith is the important element, because you have to continue, Misra, okay? No matter what, whether you get what I'm saying now, no matter what, do not give up. I just wanted to know what I'm doing wrong and what more I should be doing. I sometimes feel sad and despondent because I have lofty ambitions for working for the United Nations, world's organizations one day, and to make a difference in the world. But I feel I am not even remotely close to them at my age of 27, and feel I have let my mother and my mentor down. And this is when the negativity creeps in. I just want you to know how I should pray to show actual proof and encourage other young men and women around me. Okay? So the way you're going to do that is you're going to overcome all this shit, and you're going to have that experience under your belt and in your wisdom bank from your own life. So you're not talking about what old soup said. Okay? You're talking about what you know, what you experienced, how you made it change. And I'm just going to tell you, since you've asked all of the key questions, let me reinforce again that it's very important, or it seems to me, this has been my experience. Here, what was my great good fortune in practice that separates me from many of the other people that I know that have started chanting, because I Shakabuku'd them. When I got Shakabuku'd, I was not told what Nam Myoho Renge Kyo meant, what it was. Nothing other than if I would say these words and think about what I wanted to have happen, it would happen. And it just happened to be from a good friend from high school when I was, hitchhiking 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours to get back to my friend's apartment that I was like bumming out, sleeping on his couch because I didn't have enough money to support myself. I was a high school graduate, was all I was. I ended up ultimately achieving an income level of almost $500,000 US a year with a high school education. So, you know, you don't know where you can go once your life opens up, but it's got to be devoted to the right thing, and you can't be doing happy talk as it relates to this level of devotion. You've got to be expressing it with your life, which means you're taking all the hits without ever having a doubt about the truth and the reality. So fear and despondency reflect a lack of faith. And that's okay, because it's impossible to have A+ 10.0 faith all the time, because the devilish functions are too powerful, you know. But that's why we have the Gohonzon, because we can defeat all of that through Daimoku, through sincere seeking, through a sincere desire to fulfill our mission. So, let me tell you again, what has always been the case with me, but that I find is probably not the case with most others. And for many years, as I did Shakabuku and tried to encourage people, I didn't understand that this was the difference between my faith and experience and their own. I just kind of like mine, because I had such an incredible mentor in Mr. Matsuoka. You know, it was like, you know, he was like Yoda, for Christ's sake. He was just, he had all the answers and they all made sense. And when I applied them, they all always worked. I'm not Mr. Matsuoka, unfortunately. The reason I do these videos is to try and share as much as I can while I'm still alive that he expressed to me and that became manifest in my life as a result. But, you know, again, by virtue of my friend just telling me, you know, and this exchange of, can you say these words? What? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, what's it mean? I won't tell you. What is it? I won't tell you. Just can you say these words? That exchange took maybe 2 minutes at most for the entire thing to occur. And then later that night, after that was the trip to the grocery store, later that night when we made dinner, she started talking about some dude named Hari Ram Das and Be Here Now. And I really thought that this was something to do, what she had told me in the grocery store, this Nam-myoho Renge-kyo was something to do with just a, you know, a new age thinking. I had no idea it was Buddhism, okay? But the next day, because I was in such a desperate state of life. Now, how many times have I talked to people who are not in desperate states of life, and they're not in such a state of need that they would listen to what I have to say and immediately apply it? So my great good fortune is that I was barely surviving. I was struggling. I was embarrassed that I was so poor. I was embarrassed that I couldn't go home. I burned those bridges with my family. I was a counterculture person. I was a long-haired hippie guy. You know, I was a high school grad from the Midwest that had taken off to California like so many other people. I was not headed for a lot of expensive suits and sports cars at that time in my life. But that ultimately all occurred, and it all happened in incremental steps. And the thing that was the basis of all that was that when I found out that this really was Buddhism, and then I found out about the fact that Nichiren Daishonin, this guy I had never heard of from Japan, is the one that came up with all this stuff. And, you know, when I first started chanting and I didn't even know what it meant, I kept chanting. I chanted actually hours a day for a period of time before my Daimoku actually gave me so much fortune that I didn't have to be on the road hitchhiking hours a day. I cut my hitchhiking time in half, which unfortunately had an impact on how much I chanted, because that's when I usually did most of my Daimoku. But I still, again, I didn't even know what it was. But the fact that I was spending, and not only did I not know what it was, but I had absolute and complete faith in what I didn't know what it was. Because in my experience, every time I had utilized it, it showed me a result. And I had prayed my butt off as a Christian for my whole life. And I had never had anything work like this for me. So that when And I felt extremely limited that, you know, I lost track of Chris, the person that talked to me. I didn't know I didn't know how to continue other than just to continue, to keep chanting. And as I did, I just kept getting more benefits until I got a job promotion to an assistant manager at a 19-year-old. That made me the youngest assistant manager that the company Pier 1 Imports had ever assigned the official position of. And I got transferred away from all my bad influence friends to be totally isolated by myself in San Bernardino, California, living in a Skid Row hotel. It was really not great condition, but it was there that the experience that I also delineated in another video of somebody, me writing Nam Myoho Renge Kyo phonetically, thinking that it had to be something Eastern because I was doing this display. And then suddenly somebody saying, hey, you know, you don't have it spelled right. And then explaining me, oh, do you know about this Buddhism? Oh, it's Buddhism. You don't know it's Buddhism? No, it's Buddhism. Yeah. So in that process, that's how I ended up at my first Soka Gakkai meeting. And from the moment that I was there, I wanted that Gohonzon, but I couldn't get it because it was not available. It was only available to get at the temple. And I had to work on Sundays, and my boss, if you know the story, had already expressed his opposition to me becoming a Buddhist. And so from the very beginning, even though I had desires and wants, and I had goals, but they weren't as big as the realities that established themselves in my life without me having to have that kind of a goal, because I didn't realize I had the capacity to do things that everybody had college educations. How did I squeak by on that situation? It's a long story. I don't have time to tell you now. But I just got break after break after break after break because my most important thing was to support the Gohonzon. The most important thing I could do in my daily life was to say thank you. I couldn't believe I had been able to find this Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It was like, it was more than I could ever express gratitude toward. So my life, and then the first time I read lectures on the sutra by Josei Toda within the first year of me actually having received Gohonzon and getting hooked up with Soka Gakkai, the minute I read him talking about Bodhisattva of the earth, I'm going, well, shit, finally I now know who I am. This has got to be it. I must have come here to do Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So, within the first year of my practice, all of my Daimoku was about reflecting the great good fortune as a Bodhisattva of the earth. It wasn't really about getting the benefit. It was about winning for Nichiren. It was about proving his teaching was correct and powerful. And my family, which was very Christian, like your sister you got a problem with, they can't deny it at a point in time. I have my whole family that are still Christian. I haven't been in, because they're afraid to go to hell. So I can understand that, but there's not a single one of them that can explain the power of my life, the source of my wisdom, the fact that they do not try to talk to me or debate or take issue because I know way more than they know about everything. That's all based on Buddhism. Buddhist wisdom has allowed me to expedite what I might have otherwise been able to ascertain and retain, okay? So I became very successful in sales. How did I learn how to sell? Did I go Andrew Carnegie or some shit like that? No, I did street shakabuku. I walked up to total strangers and tried to somehow convince them to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's what I was doing in the whole early part of my practice. And then that skill set somehow translated to me being able to convince total strangers over the telephone to buy the products that I was selling them. And then I did that so well that I got put into the field. And again, I was able to convince, Or was I able to convince? Or did I just have the good fortune to constantly meet people that I could convince? Because the important thing for you to understand is that my prayer was always for the sake of the law. It was always for the sake of being able to show actual proof so I could do Shakabuku. It wasn't for the benefit of getting what I wanted. It wasn't for the perk. It wasn't for this or that. It was always about service to the cause, upholding my vow. I read President Toda sitting there saying, I made a vow to uphold, if I'm a bodhisattva of the earth, bro, this is very serious shit. You got to do it. You cannot fail. And so I would never fail the Gohonzon. No matter how much the fear and despondency came, I beat it back with a freaking stick. Okay? I defeated it over and over and over again. And how do you do that? Only from chanting to the Gohonzon and from studying. Because only from study will you get the answers that you really need to be most aware of, which is most of the Gosho is about dealing with the shit that will hit the fan when you start to attain Buddhahood. That's why President Ikeda, I emphasize it every time I read him. Almost every paragraph is overcoming difficulty, overcoming this, never quit. All the winning and losing is about being never defeated. It's not about the achievement of a specific plateau in terms of what you're trying to do in terms of gig or anything else. Like, it's being happy with whatever you have and having a full expectation that if that's not enough, it's coming. Okay? The person sitting across from me, my wife, told me for 10 straight years, no way will I ever marry you. No way. It's just an impossibility. You're too old. You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. And yet, during the time we were dating and I had fallen in love with her, she laughed at me when I would try to Shakabuku her, saying, oh, all you have to do is convince me to marry you, and I'll have to convert to your religion because that's what my society, that's what we do. And so I would always chant, this is for her own good. Somehow I've got to show that actual proof. I never gave up, even when I was dating other people. And I had issues I would chant about those people that I was dating. I would always let the Gohonzon know at the end of my Daimoku, but if I could really be with who I really want to be with, it would be Mei Ling. Mei Ling is my wife. And so, one day, after 10 years, and every time I would talk to her, she's rolling her eyes right now, but I'll just cut to the chase and end it here. Just to say simply, she called me up and said, do you still want to marry me? Even though I had never given up. And the only reason I was able to say yes, and we got married 2 weeks later in Las Vegas, and now we have 6 children. I've had triplets and twins, and the kids are the best kids that I've ever met. This was not who I lived as in my early life. Huh?
Kids all chant.
And my kids all chant. My kids all have faith. My kids all have strong faith. So my wife has strong faith. My wife has attained Buddhahood as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so no matter what you think of your life right now at 27 or 28, it will be a completely different life in the 10 years, 20 years, and then 30 years. Okay, and then 40 years. Because, dear, if you're 28, I'm like 40 years older than you. Whether you can realize that by the way I talk or the way I look or not. The miracle of modern plastic surgery. The truth is that really, that's what I wanted to express to you. Now, you say you're already doing that. Now, you are doing that, but are you doing that from the depth of your life? If so, then all this other shit doesn't matter really anymore. Okay? You're taking it on faith that the achievement of those things are circumstances that while you desire, your greatest desire is to fulfill your mission for Kosen Rufu, and that you be able to show the kind of proof of actual fact that will bring your sister back, and that you understand and perceive the teaching in a way so that the fact that your mother died even though you chanted for her not to die is not some unexplainable mystery. That you understand your life, and then by doing so, you understand everyone else's. So, Misra, Mohendra, both of you, that's the same thing. All of you that want to get super benefits. If you're super devoted to the law, you'll get super benefits. It's really, in my experience, as simple as that. If you want to talk about a strategy of what to do or how to think or anything like that, I don't have any secrets. You know, you have a Buddha nature just like I have a Buddha nature, but my Buddha nature has been awakened through a sincere process that took multiple decades, frankly speaking. It was always the most important thing to me. As a matter of fact, I hit a point of difficulty that I've alluded to, but I've never fully expressed. I'm not going to now, but one that kind of wiped me out. And it was only that extreme circumstance that made me say, maybe I don't know as much as I think I do. And made me start to reread all the Goshos that I'd already read multiple times. I was a postgraduate in the study department after my 18th year of practice. That was 30 years ago. I'm in my 49th year of practice now. Okay, so this doesn't all come as an epiphany at once. And what you are able to gain as it relates to clarity and correctness is not something that is static and never needs to be building. It's the whole point is you're building to the last moment of your life. Why does this book, which I'm going to read from next, come after all of those other Goshos that have been written? Okay, it's because the Daisho in his life continued to progress even after he had, predicated the teaching law. Look at the Goshos that he wrote before Tatsunokuchi and the ones after. When he's on Izu Peninsula, he didn't know that he's going to be dropped to his knees on the sands of Tatsunokuchi and that whatever made everybody freak out and leave and not do anything. All the stuff, or that he was going to have a debate fostered, a Tsukahara debate was going to happen, and he was going to blow everybody's shit away, and the governor is going to say, hey, you better get this guy out of here before the Nimbutsu kill him. There's all kinds of things that Nichiren Daishonin did not foresee in his life that occurred that only manifested the truth to a greater degree of what his function and who his true identity is, what his true identity was. Just like me, just like anybody else, just like Daisaku Ikeda. If you think that Daisaku Ikeda views life the way he does at this moment, the way he did 30 years ago, sure doesn't express himself the same. Okay, and how he behaved, that I know he behaved in Japan before we have really a written English record of his behavior. I mean, those were some pretty in-your-face shakabuku campaigns. You know, shakabuku are the kind of people in Japan that they shakabuku'd in the amount of time they did without being in some people's business about it. Okay, so all of this is constantly in flux. Don't forget the Daishonin's teaching. It's never static. Okay, so it's always growing. You continue to grow through your faith. Okay, and now I'm actually, Misra, whatever I've said here, or Mohindra, either one of you, anybody, if that wasn't enough to make it clear, then write to me and I'll try to express it again to help make it clear. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying I know everything or that I'm special in any way. This is just the way it unfolded for me, and when you ask me the question, I have to put my answer in the context of my life because that's how I express it and how I've seen a result from it. And I guess I'm saying if you're not replicating that sense of spiritual commitment, you may not get the same result that I've gotten or that I talk about is available to you. That's why I'm trying to share all this now. I want to make sure whatever I've been able to learn through the school of hard knocks of life that I can express because in reality, all these videos are for my 6 kids, okay? Because I'm a lot older than them. So I'm going to be starting now on what this video is the first video of the Rajani project. It's video number 1. It will be put on the other channel. Before I get into this, I need to make sure that I'm not asking for people to come and follow along and even listen to this unless you're really inspired to do so, unless you really trust my understanding to the point that you won't give me a bunch of thumbs down or some other shit that's going to discourage other people because somebody's doing that. And again, you know, I just remind everybody that it says right on the Gohonzon, may those who vex or trouble the practitioners of the law have their heads split in 7 pieces. Anybody that wants to give me shit, as far as I'm concerned, you're going way out on a limb, and I'm not being arrogant. I'm really just reflecting the truth and trying to help you avoid
slander.
Well, a diminishment of your advance, okay? So, you know, if you don't like what I say, don't watch the videos. Seriously, I didn't invite anybody in the first place. Let's go to the orally transmitted teachings. This is the first episode of the Rajani Project. It's going to concern the orally transmitted teachings. I won't be doing these on this channel from this point on, but I do want to read the life of Nichiren Daishonin. Okay, so again, we're going to study the record of the orally transmitted teachings. We're going to start out on, this is the only volume on this channel. I'm going to start by page Roman numeral 17, the introduction of a portion of this that has to do with the life of Nichiren. So I'm just going to read this and then we'll be going on. All right, page 17, Roman numeral 17 from the foreword. Introduction to the life of Nichiren. Nichiren was born in a fishing village called Kataumi in Awa province, part of the present-day Chiba prefecture east of Tokyo. The date was the 16th day of the second month of 1222 on the lunar calendar in use at the time, a date that corresponds to April 6th, 1222 on the Gregorian calendar. His family made their living by fishing, which, because it involves the taking of life, was looked on as a very lowly occupation. His childhood name was Zenichi Maro, Zen meaning good and Nichi meaning son, Maro a common suffix for a boy's name. At age 12, he entered a nearby temple called Seichoji to begin his primary education. Since no public school system existed at the time, education for children of unprivileged families was available only at Buddhist temples. Seichoji was an influential temple of the Tendai school, which upholds the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, but at this time it was also a place of practice for esoteric Buddhism and the Pure Land doctrine, neither of which hold the Lotus Sutra in high esteem. And practice of esoteric Buddhism would have been true word. Okay. Okay, you can read the little extra information at the bottom if you like. It's not germane. As a boy at Seichoji, Nichiren tells us he used to pray before a statue of Bodhisattva Kokuzo, or space treasury, that was enshrined there, hoping and vowing to become the wisest person in all Japan. So from the time he was 12 years old, he felt he was on some sort of a mission and had a desire for the sake of Buddhism and wanted to understand the Buddha's teachings. Okay, why such an extraordinary desire? The question mark. We may surmise from his writings that he sought the wisdom to answer certain vital questions that troubled him. Okay, so never be afraid to express your questions. They're part of the process. That's what it's saying was the thing that lit the fire of Nichiren to study Buddhism. In 1221, and there's always a legitimate, real answer to all your questions, okay? None of your questions are stupid questions. None of your questions are meaningless questions. Always embrace your questions for the sake of the truth and for the sake of the law, though, not just your own knowledge. In 2021, the year before Nichiren's birth, the retired Emperor Gotoba the de facto leader of the imperial family, along with 2 other retired emperors, had attempted to overthrow the shogunate, the military government headquartered in Kamakura. That event, known as the Jokyu disturbance because it took place in the 3rd year of the Jokyu era, ended in the defeat of the imperial forces and the exile of the 3 leaders. The young Nichiren wondered why the imperial family, the legitimate ruler of Japan, had suffered such a tragic defeat, though it had sponsored prayers for victory by priests such of the prestigious Tendai and True Word schools. Japanese Buddhism at the time was made up of a number of different schools, preaching a variety of doctrines and urging the adoption of this or that religious practice. Nichiren wondered why Buddhism had become divided in this fashion when it was the teaching of a single Buddha, Shakyamuni. He was concerned that, though Buddhism existed to save the people from suffering and to bring peace and stability to society, it apparently lacked the power to accomplish these goals. As a young man, he tried to determine just what truth Shakyamuni had awakened to and how he himself could lead the people away from suffering. Hence, he prayed for the wisdom needed to realize these aims. So he was quite a young man. He wasn't chanting for cars or jobs. At 16, he decided to become a priest, renouncing secular life and devoting himself to Buddhist studies. So he had made the decision, I'm going to devote the rest of my life. I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have a family. I'll take care of my parents, but I'm going to figure this out. All right? At 16, he decided to become a priest, renouncing secular life and devoting himself to Buddhist studies. Entering the priesthood under the tutelage of Dozenbo, a senior priest of the temple, he took the name Rensho, which means lotus growth. Later, he continued his studies at the major centers of Buddhism in Kamakura, Kyoto, and Nara. Carefully reading all the sutras available to him, he delved into the essential doctrines of the various schools. And I can show you from volume 2, all of the backup of him knowing everything about everything. I mean, all the other schools, he knows what their doctrines are. He knows who the founders were. He knows everything about all of Buddhism. It's an amazing, wonderful thing. You don't have to go figure that out. All you have to do is read the Gosho, and you can know as much about Buddhism as anybody that does. He goes, carefully reading all the sutras available to him, he delved into the essential doctrines of the various schools of both Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhism. In Letter to the Priest of Seichoji, written in 1276, he describes his spiritual pursuit at that time, referring to himself in the 3rd person. As a youth, he received great wisdom from the living Bodhisattva space treasury. He prayed to the Bodhisattva to become the wisest person in Japan. The Bodhisattva must have taken pity on him, for he presented him with a great jewel, as brilliant as the morning star, which Nichiren tucked away in his right sleeve. Thereafter, on pursuing the entire bodies of sutras, he was able to discern in essence the relative worth of the 8 schools as well as all of the scriptures. And that process that he just described will happen to each and every one of you that actually is able to attain Buddhahood in your present form. When that changeover, when that at last occurs, when you realize that you always have been the Buddha, when you read all the Goshos, you will read them all differently in terms of perception than you read them previous to that. Every time you read the Lotus Sutra, you're going to understand it in a way that you never could have understood it had you not been able to perceive the truth of your life in the first place. Because in reality, all of this teaching is talking about you. It's wild, but it's the truth. The great jewel to which he refers, which he says he tucked in his sleeve like it was something. The great jewel to which he refers can be identified as the wisdom of the mystic law or wonderful law, the universal law by which all Buddhas become enlightened, and the foundation of all the Buddhist teachings. what he became, the great jewel, which he says he received and tucked to it, was the understanding of the simultaneity of the law of cause and effect, which he named Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, that's what they're talking about here. Again, the great jewel to which it refers can be identified as the wisdom of the mystic law, the wisdom of the Buddha, or the wonderful law, the universal law by which all Buddhas become enlightened, and is the foundation of all Buddhist teachings. Nichiren's teaching is to say that that is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, and Nam Myoho Renge Kyo only comes from him. In the course of his studies, Nichiren arrived at some key conclusions, which may be summarized as follows. So these are conclusions that he came to independent of what the opinion of other teachers might have been or other priests might have been. He had already begun to seek for himself the truth. 1. Okay, in the course of his studies, Nichiren arrived at some key conclusions which may be summarized as follows in the middle of page 19, Roman numeral 19. 1. The Lotus Sutra. So he studied everything from the flower garland through the agamas, through the correct and equal, through the wisdom sutras, through the perfect teaching. Okay, so the Lotus Sutra is supreme among all the sutras that Shakyamuni expounded. He came to that conclusion on his own based on content. The wonderful law to which Nichiren awakened is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the core of the Lotus Sutra. The sutra describes the Buddha entrusting the bodhisattvas of the earth with the mission of spreading this core teaching and enabling the people of the latter day of the law to attain Buddhahood. Okay, so what is the enabling factor for Kosen Rufu to occur? The bodhisattvas of the earth spreading the perfect teaching of the original teacher. That's what that just said. 3. Nichiren, having realized the wonderful law, identified himself with Bodhisattva superior practices as the one who would fulfill the mission of revealing and spreading the essence of the Lotus Sutra. That's why I always say we're the original disciples of the original teacher. He's the original teacher. We're disciples of Nichiren, and that makes us disciples of the original teacher. He gives us great praise for being his disciples, as I'll read to you when we go through the OTT. That's the real reason I want to read it, because this is what opened my mind to being the Buddha in my present form. I read all the Goshos. This is what said, no, Tom, you are the Buddha just as you are. No matter who you are, bro, you're already there. Okay, so 4, he recognized that the various Buddhist doctrines that prevailed in his time all shared a common element, that of slandering or going against the correct teaching of the Buddha as it is embodied in the Lotus Sutra. So he realized that all the other Buddhist doctrines, once Shakyamuni revealed the truth in the Lotus Sutra, they all became incorrect and obstacles to the truth, and thereby became slander, which I'm going to read you in the next Gosho. I'm going to read after I read this. He recognized that the various Buddhist doctrines that prevailed in his time all shared a common element, that of slandering or going against the correct teaching of the Buddha as it is embodied in the Lotus Sutra, his final teaching after the before the nirvana. Part of the perfect teaching, though, as divined by Tentai. He decided to reveal and rebuke the slander committed by those schools, fully realizing that he would meet with great persecution, with the great persecutions that the sutra predicts will assail a practitioner who does so. So the Lotus Sutra says we're supposed to stand up and refute error, and at the same time says you will catch a lot of shit for having done so. But the kind of fortune you will instill in your life can never be destroyed by doing so. Going on to page 20, top of the top. So he knew what he was stepping into, just as we should know what we're stepping into if our prayer is truly to become the Buddha. You know, you can say you want to become the Buddha trying to get a benefit. That's not the same thing as actually desiring to be the Buddha. Okay? They are two different realities in terms of what's in your mind and what you're actually seeking in that process. And the power of that prayer being made that way. Okay? So now it was clear to him what course he should take, though he might face harsh opposition and even place his life in peril. He did not begrudge his life. At noon on the 28th day of the 4th month of 1253, Rinzhou, Nichiren, who had renamed himself Nichiren or Sun Lotus, stationed himself on the veranda of one of the buildings of Seichoji Temple and delivered a sermon to an audience gathered in the courtyard. His preaching, in which he was supposed to display the results of his years of study, turned out to be a surprise to the gathering, for he relentlessly refuted the Pure Land Amida doctrine and other Buddhist teachings endorsed by his hearers. The people that were there to listen to him were all Nimbutsu at that point in time. That's what Seichoji had converted to, from Tendai to Nimbutsu. And so he's telling all of them, hey, you guys, you're screwed up. You have completely misunderstood the teaching of the Lotus Sutra. It's this. And now I'm telling you it's actually all conformed to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This is where he announces Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the world for the first time. This thing that he does at Seichoji on the 28th day of April in 1253. He relentlessly refuted the Pure Land doctrine and other Buddhist teachings endorsed by his hearers. In resounding tones, he recited Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, proclaiming it to be the only teaching capable of leading people to enlightenment or Buddhahood in the latter day of the law. This event is known as the Declaration of the Establishment of his Teachings, April 28, 1253. News of this reached Tojo Tagenobu, the steward of the village where the temple was located, who was an ardent believer in the Pure Land teachings. Nichiren suspected that he might face bodily attack from Tojo Tagenobu's warrior retainers, but through the help of fellow priests, he was able to leave the temple unharmed. Actually, Dozimbo had two of the other senior priests get him out of there. Which there's Gosho letters to both of them. He visited his parents nearby and converted them to his teaching, bestowing on his father the Buddhist name Myonichi, wonderful son, and on his mother that of Myoren, wonderful lotus. Then he departed for Kamakura, the seat of the military government, which would thereafter become the center of his propagation activities. Let's stop there. Is that another 20 minutes?